Have you ever worked for someone who made you feel invisible? Someone who stole your ideas, crushed your confidence, and reminded you daily that you are nothing without them? I did. For 3 years, I endured the worst boss imaginable. But what she didn't know is that I was documenting everything. Every stolen presentation, every inappropriate comment, every illegal shortcut. And when the moment came, I didn't just quit. I orchestrated her complete professional destruction. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, 29 years old. If you're watching this, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time it is there. I read every single one because your stories fuel mine. Now, let me take you back 3 years to the day I walked into Apex Marketing Solutions thinking I'd landed my dream job. The office was everything you'd imagine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago, exposed brick walls covered with awards, a coffee bar that could rival Starbucks, and an open floor plan filled with MacBooks and ambition. I was 26, fresh out of grad school with my MBA, and absolutely terrified. That's when I met her. Victoria Hayes. VP of Marketing, early 40s, pristine white Chanel blazer, red-bottomed Louboutins, and a smile that didn't quite reach her ice blue eyes. Her handshake was crushing, a power play I should have recognized as a warning. She led me to my desk, tucked in the corner behind a support column while the intern had a window view, and dropped a massive folder on my desk. I need a competitive analysis by Monday. That's 3 days from now, including the weekend. Think you can handle it, she said, looking me up and down, her gaze stopping on my Payless shoes with visible disgust. Then came the threat disguised as advice. I've had 5 assistants in the past 2 years. None of them worked out. They couldn't handle the pressure, the hours, or, frankly, the standard of excellence I maintain. The guy at the next desk, Marcus, leaned over and whispered, "Document everything. Trust me on this." I spent that entire weekend working. Saturday and Sunday in coffee shops, living on espresso and granola bars, creating a 47-slide PowerPoint presentation with comprehensive analysis, creative recommendations, and campaign mock-ups. It was the best work I'd ever done. Monday morning, Victoria barely glanced at it. "This is adequate," she said. Adequate. 30 hours of work got me adequate. But that wasn't even the worst part. Thursday came. The Morrison Tech pitch, a $5 million potential client, the entire executive team watching. I walked into the conference room to help set up, and there it was, my presentation on the screen. Not a modified version, my exact presentation, slide for slide, with one change, Victoria's name where mine had been. My slides, my research, my ideas, all with her name on them. I stood there frozen as the realization hit me. She was going to present my work as her own, in front of everyone. For 45 minutes, I sat in the corner taking notes while Victoria presented my work word for word. The Morrison team loved it. "This is brilliant work, Victoria," their CEO said. "This is why Victoria is the best in the business," our CEO added. After the meeting, Victoria pulled me aside and whispered, "Good job today, Sarah. You made sure everything ran smoothly. That's important for a junior team member." She walked away, leaving me with the bitter taste of injustice. That night, I cried, then I got angry, then I remembered Marcus's advice. I opened my laptop and created a folder. A private, encrypted folder backed up to 3 different cloud services. Inside, I put the original version of my presentation with the metadata showing I'd created it, screenshots of Victoria's email assigning me the work, the dates, the hours, everything. This was just the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but that folder would eventually destroy Victoria Hayes's entire career. And honestly, she deserved every bit of what was coming. The Morrison deal closed 2 weeks later, $5 million annual contract, the biggest win our agency had seen in 3 years. Victoria was treated like a hero. They threw her a celebration lunch at some expensive steakhouse downtown, gave her a bonus that I heard was 6 figures, and our CEO personally thanked her in the company-wide meeting. "This is the kind of strategic brilliance that sets Apex apart," Robert Chin announced, while Victoria stood there soaking up applause that should have been mine. I wasn't even invited to the celebration lunch. But I was invited to the aftermath, which meant endless late nights finishing Victoria's other projects while she enjoyed her victory lap. The pattern became crystal clear over the next 6 months. Victoria would assign me massive projects with impossible deadlines. I'd kill myself completing them, and then she'd present them as her own work. A rebranding proposal for a healthcare client? Mine. Presented by Victoria. A social media strategy for a fashion startup? Mine. Victoria's name on it. A market expansion plan for a tech company? You guessed it, mine, but somehow Victoria's genius idea. And every single time, she'd pull me aside afterward and say something like, "Good support work, Sarah. You're learning how real marketing is done." Learning? I was doing all the work while she took all the credit. But here's what Victoria didn't know. I was documenting everything. Every email where she assigned me work, every original file with my metadata, every presentation before she changed the name, every late-night Slack message, every weekend I sacrificed. My encrypted folder grew thicker by the week. Marcus became my only real friend at the office. One night, around 9 p.m. when we were the only ones left, he rolled his chair over to my desk. "She did the same thing to me last year," he said quietly. "I created an entire campaign strategy for a beverage company. She presented it, got promoted to VP, and I got nothing. Why didn't you say something?" I asked. He laughed bitterly. "To who? Her boss loves her. HR loves her. She brings in millions in revenue. Who's going to believe a junior employee over the golden girl? So you just let her get away with it?" "I tried to fight back once," Marcus said, his voice dropping even lower. "Sent an email to HR documenting everything. You know what happened? 2 weeks later, I was written up for performance issues and unprofessional conduct." Victoria's very good at covering her tracks and making you look like the problem. That's when I realized I couldn't just collect evidence. I needed to be smart about this. Strategic. Patient. Then came the breaking point. It was a Tuesday morning, about 8 months into my job. Victoria called me into her office with an unusual smile on her face. "Sarah, I have exciting news. I'm putting you forward for a special project. The Titanium account." I felt a flutter of hope. Titanium Industries was one of our oldest clients, and they were looking to completely overhaul their brand for their 50th anniversary. This was huge, the kind of project that could make a career. "Really?" I couldn't hide my excitement. "This is incredible, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Victoria said, but she was still smiling. "This is a test. If you can develop a compelling pitch, something truly innovative, it could change your trajectory here. But it needs to be exceptional. This is your chance to prove you're more than just support staff." For the first time in months, I felt seen, valued. Maybe I'd been wrong about Victoria. Maybe she actually was giving me a real opportunity. I threw myself into the Titanium project like my life depended on it. 3 weeks of research, late nights, skipped meals, canceled plans with friends. I interviewed their executives, studied their history, analyzed their competitors, surveyed their customers. I created a complete rebrand strategy, new logo concepts, new messaging framework, new marketing channels, new brand voice, everything. It was a 94-slide presentation, the most comprehensive work I'd ever produced. I even hired a freelance designer with my own money to make the mock-ups look professional. When I finally presented it to Victoria in her office, I was exhausted but proud. She went through every slide carefully, nodding, occasionally making notes, asking questions. "This is impressive, Sarah," she said when we finished. "Really impressive. Leave it with me. I'll review it more thoroughly and we'll discuss next steps." I floated out of her office. Finally, I was being recognized. 2 days later, Victoria scheduled the Titanium pitch, but she didn't tell me about it. I found out when I saw it on her calendar by accident. The meeting was happening in conference room A at 2 p.m. I wasn't invited. I waited until 2:05, then walked past the conference room like I was heading to the bathroom. Through the glass wall, I could see Victoria presenting my slides, my rebrand strategy, my logo concepts, my messaging framework. All of it. But this time, something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I got cold, calculated. Victoria Hayes had just made her biggest mistake. Because I had proof of everything and I was done playing nice. I walked back to my desk with a smile on my face, not because I was happy, but because I'd finally reached my limit. Victoria had stolen one project too many, and this time, she'd handed me the perfect weapon. The titanium rebrand was different from everything else, because I'd done something smart. I'd timestamped everything. Every concept sketch had metadata. Every research document had version history. Every email with titanium executives had my name on it, not Victoria's. And most importantly, I'd presented the entire strategy to Marcus 2 weeks before showing Victoria, and he'd helped me practice. There was a witness. That night, I sat in my apartment with a bottle of wine and my laptop, staring at my encrypted folder. It now contained evidence from 14 different projects over 8 months, presentations, emails, files, timestamps, everything. But Marcus's warning echoed in my head. HR won't believe you. She's too valuable. He was right. I couldn't just go to HR with a complaint. Victoria would spin it, make me look jealous or incompetent, and I'd be the one fired. I needed something bigger. Something undeniable. Something that would make her untouchable status irrelevant. I started researching. How do you take down someone who seems bulletproof? That's when I discovered something interesting about Apex Marketing Solutions. We were a privately held company, but we'd been in acquisition talks with a major advertising conglomerate called Global Reach Media for the past 6 months. The trade publications had covered it. If the acquisition went through, it would be worth $50 million, and our CEO would finally get his big payday. Acquisitions like that require something called due diligence, which means the buying company investigates everything. Finances, client relationships, employee records, legal compliance, ethical standards, everything. One scandal during due diligence could kill the entire deal. Suddenly, I had leverage. But I needed more than just stolen credit. I needed something that would scare Global Reach's lawyers. That's when I started digging into Victoria's other practices, not just the idea theft. I began staying late every night, watching, listening, documenting. And what I found was worse than I'd imagined. Victoria wasn't just stealing credit from me, she'd been doing it to junior employees for years. I reached out carefully to her previous 5 assistants, the ones who couldn't handle the pressure. 4 of them responded. Their stories were identical to mine: projects assigned, work completed, credit stolen, and when they tried to speak up, they were pushed out. One woman, Jennifer, had been particularly helpful. She made my life so miserable that I quit without another job lined up, Jennifer told me over coffee. I was having panic attacks every morning. My therapist said it was a textbook hostile work environment. Did you document any of it? I asked carefully. I did, actually. Emails, files, everything. I was going to sue, but my lawyer said it would be my word against hers, and she had the company's support. I couldn't afford a long legal battle, so I just left. Would you be willing to share that documentation with me? I asked. Jennifer studied my face for a long moment. Are you planning something? I'm planning to make sure she can't do this to anyone else, I said honestly. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. I'll send you everything I have. Make her pay for what she did to us. Over the next month, I collected evidence from all 4 previous assistants. The pattern was damning. 5 junior employees in 3 years, all women, all treated the same way. Assigned impossible work, ideas stolen, credit taken, then pushed out when they complained. But I found something even more valuable. Victoria had been lying on client reports. She'd been inflating performance metrics to make her campaigns look more successful than they actually were. A social media campaign she claimed reached 5 million people actually reached 1.2 million. A brand awareness increase of 40%? Actually 18%. She'd been doctoring the numbers in her presentations to clients and to our executives, which meant she was committing fraud. Both against our clients who were paying for results they didn't get, and against our CEO who was making business decisions based on false data. This wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. And if Global Reach discovered it during due diligence, the acquisition would implode. Now I had everything I needed. But I couldn't just dump it on HR or the CEO. I needed perfect timing and the right audience. That's when I learned that Global Reach's due diligence team would be visiting our office in 6 weeks for in-person interviews and document review. They'd be meeting with department heads, reviewing client files, and interviewing random employees about company culture and ethical practices. Perfect. I spent those 6 weeks preparing my case like a lawyer preparing for trial. I organized everything into a comprehensive report, chronological timeline of idea theft, testimony from previous assistants, evidence of falsified client metrics, documentation of hostile work environment practices, and a detailed breakdown of how Victoria's fraud could expose the company to legal liability. I made it professional, unemotional, and absolutely airtight. Every claim had multiple sources of evidence. Every accusation had documentation. I even consulted with an employment lawyer friend who confirmed that what Victoria had been doing wasn't just unethical. Several aspects could constitute fraud, especially the falsified client metrics. But here's the thing. I wasn't doing this just for revenge anymore. Yes, I wanted Victoria to pay for what she'd done to me, but I'd talked to her previous victims. I'd heard their stories of panic attacks, damaged confidence, derailed careers. Victoria Hayes was a predator in a pantsuit, and she'd been getting away with it for years because she made the company money. The Friday before Global Reach's due diligence team arrived, something happened that confirmed I was doing the right thing. A new junior employee started, a bright-eyed 25-year-old named Amy, fresh out of grad school, so excited to work under the legendary Victoria Hayes. I watched Victoria greet her with that same predatory smile she'd given me 3 years ago. I watched her assign Amy an impossible project with a 3-day deadline. I watched the cycle beginning again. That night, I finalized my report and prepared 3 copies, one for Global Reach's due diligence team, one for our CEO, and one for the largest marketing industry trade publication, just in case the first 2 didn't work. Monday morning, the Global Reach team arrived, 3 lawyers, 2 accountants, and an HR specialist. They set up in our large conference room and began their interviews. I was scheduled to meet with them Wednesday afternoon as part of their random employee culture interviews. I had 72 hours until everything changed. Victoria had no idea what was coming, and honestly, that made it so much sweeter. Wednesday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., not because I was nervous, but because I was ready. I'd spent 3 years being invisible, 8 months being stolen from, and the last 6 weeks preparing for this exact moment. I put on my best suit, the one I'd bought for my grad school interviews, printed 3 copies of my report, and headed to the office with a calm I'd never felt before. The Global Reach due diligence team had been interviewing employees all week. I'd watched people come and go from the conference room, most looking nervous or confused. Victoria had been particularly charming, bringing them coffee and making small talk, completely confident that everything would go smoothly. She had no idea that in a few hours, her entire world would collapse. My interview was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, I walked to the conference room with my report in a manila folder. The same kind of folder Victoria had used when she first gave me that impossible weekend assignment 3 years ago. Poetic, really. The lead attorney, a woman named Patricia Morgan, greeted me with a professional smile. "Sarah Mitchell? Please have a seat. This should only take about 30 minutes. We're just trying to get a sense of company culture and operational practices." "I understand," I said calmly, sitting down. "But I think this might take a bit longer than 30 minutes. I have information about fraudulent practices that directly impact this acquisition." The room went silent. Patricia's smile faded. "I'm sorry, did you say fraudulent practices?" "Yes." I opened my folder and slid copies of my report across the table to each of them. "What I'm about to share with you is documented, verified, and involves multiple violations of ethical standards, client contract obligations, and potentially federal fraud statutes." For the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything. The systematic idea theft from junior employees. I showed them the metadata on files proving I'd created presentations that Victoria claimed as her own. The pattern of harassment and hostile work environment. I shared testimony from 4 previous assistants with their documented evidence. the falsified client metrics. I showed them the real data versus what Victoria had reported, highlighting specific instances where she'd inflated numbers by 200% or more. And the kicker. I explained how this exposed the company to massive legal liability from clients who'd paid for results based on fraudulent reporting. Patricia's expression shifted from polite interest to serious concern to barely concealed alarm. The accountants were frantically taking notes. The HR specialist looked like she might be sick. "Ms. Mitchell," Patricia said carefully, "these are extremely serious allegations. You understand that if this information is accurate, it could significantly impact the acquisition." "I understand completely," I said. "That's why every single claim in this report has multiple sources of verification. File metadata, email timestamps, witness testimony, client records, everything. I'm not making accusations. I'm presenting facts." "Why didn't you report this through internal channels?" one of the accountants asked. "I did," I lied smoothly. Well, sort of lied. I'd mentioned it to Marcus, and he'd warned me it wouldn't work. I was told that Victoria Hayes brings in too much revenue to risk upsetting her. That junior employees need to understand how things work at the executive level. So I waited for an audience that would actually care about the truth. Patricia closed her copy of the report. "We're going to need to speak with your CEO immediately. And we'll need to interview Victoria Hayes. Would you be willing to be present for that conversation?" "Absolutely," I said. What happened next was beautiful. Robert Chin was called into the conference room. His expression went from confused to angry to pale as Patricia walked him through my findings. "This can't be right," he kept saying. "Victoria is our top performer. She's brought in millions." With falsified metrics, Patricia interrupted coldly. "Which means your clients have been defrauded, and Global Reach would be acquiring a company with massive legal exposure. We need to speak with Ms. Hayes immediately." Victoria was summoned. She walked in with her usual confidence, smiled at everyone, then saw me sitting there and her smile faltered just slightly. "What's this about?" she asked. Patricia didn't waste time. "Ms. Hayes, we have evidence that you've been systematically taking credit for work completed by junior employees and falsifying client performance metrics. Would you like to respond to these allegations?" I watched the color drain from Victoria's face. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in 3 years. And I smiled. That's ridiculous," Victoria stammered. "Sarah is a disgruntled employee who's upset about her performance reviews. This is clearly retaliation for." "For what?" I interrupted calmly. "For the 14 projects you stole from me? Or for the 4 assistants before me that you did the same thing to? Or maybe for the client metrics you inflated by an average of 180%. I slid a specific document across the table. "This is the Titanium Industries rebrand. You presented it last week. Here's the original file, created by me, as proven by metadata. Here's the email where you assigned me the project. Here's my presentation to Marcus 2 weeks before I showed you, timestamped and witnessed. And here's the version you presented with only one change, your name instead of mine." Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Patricia leaned forward. "Ms. Hayes, I strongly suggest you consult with an attorney before saying anything else. Mr. Chin, we need to suspend this due diligence process immediately. Global Reach cannot proceed with an acquisition while these allegations are under investigation." Robert Chin looked devastated. His $50 million deal was evaporating in front of his eyes. And it was all because of Victoria Hayes. The Golden Girl had finally lost her shine. Victoria Hayes was suspended that same afternoon, escorted out of the building by security while the entire office watched through the glass walls. Her designer bag, her awards, her framed photos, all packed into a cardboard box. The walk of shame she'd forced on so many others was finally hers. I stood by my desk, watching, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt powerful. The investigation took 6 weeks. Global Reach brought in a forensic accounting team and an independent HR investigator. They interviewed everyone, current employees, former assistants, even clients. What they found was worse than even I had documented. Victoria had been falsifying metrics for over 4 years, not just 8 months. The total amount of fraud was estimated at over $2 million in fake performance results that clients had paid for. 17 different junior employees had complained about her through various channels over the years, but she'd always been protected because she brought in revenue. Except that revenue was built on lies. The acquisition fell through, of course. Global Reach pulled out completely, citing irreconcilable ethical and legal concerns. Robert Chin lost his $50 million payday. But here's the twist he didn't see coming. 3 of our biggest clients sued Apex for fraudulent reporting once the story broke. The lawsuits totaled $8 million. Victoria was fired, obviously. But it got better. The state attorney general opened a fraud investigation. She faced potential criminal charges, not just civil penalties. Her LinkedIn went dark. Her industry reputation was destroyed. Every article about the scandal mentioned her name. Former VP Victoria Hayes at center of multi-million-dollar fraud investigation. The woman who'd built her career on stolen ideas and fake numbers was now unemployable. As for me, Robert Chin called me into his office 3 weeks after Victoria's suspension. I thought I was getting fired. Instead, he offered me her old job. "Sarah, I failed you," he said, and he actually looked ashamed. "I created an environment where someone like Victoria could thrive while people like you suffered. I can't undo that, but I can make sure it never happens again. I want you to rebuild this department the right way, with integrity, with proper credit given, with mentorship instead of exploitation." I was 29 years old, and suddenly I was VP of marketing at a major agency. The irony wasn't lost on me. But I didn't take the job to replace Victoria. I took it to fix what she'd broken. My first hire was Amy, the new junior employee Victoria had just started tormenting. I promoted her to junior account manager and became the mentor Victoria never was. My second call was to Jennifer and the other former assistants. I couldn't give them back the years Victoria stole, but I could offer them opportunities at the rebuilt Apex. 3 of them came back. Marcus became my director of strategy, the position he should have had years ago if Victoria hadn't stolen his work and sabotaged his career. We rebuilt the department on a simple principle: credit goes to the person who does the work. Radical, I know. 6 months later, Apex secured new clients, real clients with real results and honest reporting. We didn't need to lie about our success because we were actually successful. The company stabilized and even started acquisition talks with a different firm, one that valued ethics as much as revenue. As for Victoria, I heard through industry gossip that she'd moved to a small town in Idaho and was working in her family's real estate business. Her marketing career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. And every time someone Googled her name, the first page of results was articles about the fraud scandal. Some people might say I went too far, that I destroyed a woman's entire life over stolen credit. But here's what I know. Victoria destroyed 5 careers before mine. She committed fraud against clients who trusted her. She created a toxic environment that drove talented people out of the industry. She didn't just steal my ideas, she stole my confidence, my peace of mind, my sense of worth. And she did it with a smile, knowing she'd get away with it because she always had. I didn't destroy Victoria Hayes. I just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own actions. And honestly, I'd do it again. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. First, document everything. You never know when you'll need proof. Second, patience is more powerful than immediate reaction. I waited, I planned, and I struck when it would hurt the most. Third, protect yourself, but also protect the people who come after you. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about making sure Victoria couldn't hurt anyone else. And finally, never underestimate the quiet ones. Victoria thought I was just another disposable junior employee, forgettable, replaceable, harmless. She never saw me as a threat until it was too late. That was her biggest mistake. Now, if this story resonated with you, do me a favor. Smash that like button and hit subscribe. Turn on notifications because I've got more stories coming and, trust me, some of them are even crazier than this one. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to deal with a toxic boss? How did you handle it? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's being underestimated right now, someone who's documenting everything and waiting for their moment. And remember, the quiet ones are always the most dangerous. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.